Democrat Joe Biden was declared winner of the U.S. presidency on Saturday after victories in both Pennsylvania and Nevada pushed him over the 270 electoral votes needed to win. That's according to the Associated Press. Now, in his acceptance speech delivered on Sunday, Biden pledged to be a president who seeks not to divide, but to unify. Many world leaders have already congratulated Biden on his victory and expressed willingness for cooperation with the U.S. on international issues. President Donald Trump, however, has so far refused to concede defeat. His campaign has filed lawsuits in 4 states attempting to challenge the legitimacy of the result. What does this year's election reveal about the U.S.? What are the challenges for Biden ahead? Joining me here in Beijing is Wang Cong, chief reporter at the Global Times, and from Vancouver via Skype is Cyrus Janssen, China business consultant at APP Marketing Solutions. Welcome to our program, gentlemen. So the race to the White House took longer than expected, and it could go on. Let's look at some numbers here first. Joe Biden passed the all-important 270 electoral votes, and for the popular votes, more than 74 million American people cast their ballots for Biden, breaking the record set by Barack Obama 4 years ago. So 12 years ago, to be exact. Also, despite the rampant COVID-19 pandemic, this election is predicted to have the highest voter turnout in more than a century, which could stand at somewhere around 67%. So what are your interpretations, Mr. Wang, about these record-breaking numbers?
Look, I know going into this election, we know the United States was facing a unprecedented time of inflection point. You know, they call that inflection point. President-elect Joe Biden called that because, you know, it has been facing a confluence of crises from the COVID-19 pandemic as well as the economic fallout. But what this election was about was President Donald Trump's style of rhetoric and politics, and I think the result, although you know, Joe Biden prevailed in this election, but it says as much as the trouble that the United States still face, that you know, the United States is still facing is still very divided in the ideology and in everything from policy to foreign. So I think it reveals more problem than a solution. Although everybody, you know, from Philadelphia to New York, everybody in the United States is celebrating, but facing the President-elect Joe Biden is nothing short of a long list of tasks that he has to overcome, and the first of that is to unify. Although he struck that tone in his speech, but that's not a small task.
Yeah, it looks like the uphill battle for him is just starting. So let me get your thoughts on this, Mr. Janssen. What do these numbers tell us? Voter turnout, 67%, and popular votes, 74 million people cast their ballots for Biden. What are the American people hoping for?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I think it's really a great testament to the American people for really coming out here and participating in this vote. And there's something that's important to realize is that Donald Trump also broke that record, right? Donald Trump received over 70 million votes himself, also beating Obama's record. So, you know, although Joe Biden won the popular vote by 4 million, Donald Trump ran a good campaign. You know, he had a lot of supporters. You know, it was actually, as we know, it was a very close election. We did not have the official result for many days after the election day. You know, so it's a great moment for America in the sense of so many people have turned out. There was a very big initiative to get people to register, you know, to get young people to register to vote, people that have never voted before, to all get them out. And this is really the great thing about American democracy, is that everybody can have their voice heard. But it does also show us that the nation is very divided, very polarized, you know, considering the fact that Joe Biden won. That means people want change. But again, 70 million people also breaking that record. Many people still wanted to give Trump another 4 years.
Right. As you mentioned, the race was very close. It was knife edge and battleground states, with Biden leading or catching up and flipping and eventually winning 7 out of 12. That, of course, includes Michigan and Wisconsin, which were both red 4 years ago. And Hillary Clinton, let's compare, only won 4 of those 12. Why are these swing states turning blue this time around, Mr. Wang?
Well, I think, every 4 years they have a election, and every 4 years they vote on the character and the effectiveness of the president. And I think those swing states, originally, I think, it has a lot to do with the, the population and everything. But it's all about the incumbent president. And, every 4 years, people, like to change the tone and the policy. So I think mostly, I think people are just, people in the United States, especially in those key swing states, they're just tired of the rhetoric out of the White House under President Donald Trump. They just wanted something changed. They're not necessarily voting for the policy or the, the competence of Joe Biden, but they just wanted something to change. I think that's the most important driving force behind these swing states.
Yeah, people want changes, and it's reported that Biden has already started making plans for the office, preparing for transition. He's delivered his acceptance speech, but Trump, on the other side, has not formally conceded and so far insists that he is the winner. And his lawyers have continued to file lawsuits, legal challenges to the result. Many media are saying that these lawsuits won't make a difference, but some, like Republican Senator Ted Cruz, say that Trump still has a path to victory and that the Trump team's legal battle could reach the Supreme Court. Where are things headed now, Mr. Janssen? How much leverage will Trump have in all this?
Well, that's very interesting. I mean, I think what we see in Trump's camp is that it's very divided. For example, his daughter and his wife have both asked him to go ahead and concede the election, and it's really his two sons, Eric and Don Jr., that have come back and have said, no, let's fight this. We need to continue to fight. I think what we're seeing here is, Donald Trump does not like to lose. And this is a tough loss for him. I mean, he has come out and said, Joe Biden is the worst potential candidate. There's no way that I could lose to him. We're going to win this election by a mile. Obviously, that didn't happen. So he's really lost a lot of face. And, that's a very difficult, pill for him to swallow. I don't believe that there's really any chance for Donald Trump. It is certainly within the law of the United States for him to follow these lawsuits. He can file these lawsuits, I should say. And he can do that because, he can challenge the result. But when you're leading by 20, 30, 40,000 votes, I mean, the recount will never, going to swing that result. And, I mean, really, there's no chance. I mean, I think eventually he's going to have to concede. But we're just seeing a little bit, maybe a bit of pride, a little bit of ego right now that's just not allowing him to do that. But we see with his camp divided, there's a lot of conflict internal, too, within the Trump team.
Yeah, let's discuss this legal process. According to U.S. law, Biden needs an ascertainment from the administrator of the GSA, which is the General Services Administration, before he has truly won the presidency. And so far, the GSA has only said that an ascertainment has not yet been made and will continue to abide by and fulfill all requirements under the law. Just how much longer could that take, Mr. Janssen?
Well, I think, in this... sorry.
Sorry, yeah, Mr. Janssen, we'll get back to you, Mr. Wang, later.
Yeah, no problem. So I think the last time that we've seen this delay, was in 2000 when it was Al Gore versus George Bush. I think that they are just delaying a little bit. I mean, but they are following the laws of the Constitution. I don't see this as a very big thing, to be honest. They're going to wait a little bit of time, but more importantly, I mean, we're all waiting for when the Electoral College formally meets in December to actually cast their votes. I think this will come within, certainly sometime this week as the results become even more and more clear. There's still some votes coming in for these states. I mean, theoretically, if the rest of them come in Republican, maybe there's a chance. More than likely not. But I mean, this is definitely done. I think they're just waiting for all the votes to be counted, and then they're going to go ahead and make their formal declaration that Joe Biden is the next president.
Mr. Wang, you had a point to make just now. When will Joe Biden officially become president-elect?
Well, I disagree a little bit. I think this is a pretty big deal that, the GSA has not started that process. And also, mainstream, Republican leaders have not recognized this. Because although this is not official, I have to make that clear that this is not an official result. but this has been a tradition. And the result has been clear. You know, it has been called by mainstream media. This is how it has been operating for decades, I think. And you know, that they are not recognizing this process, that the GSA has not started it. And also, I have to point out that the GSA's head was appointed by President Donald Trump. I think that says a lot about where the American democratic system stands, that people are, that, you know, they, both sides, I think, not just Republicans, but the Democrats, also have this, I think, unprecedented, where I put it, you know, it's just, I think it's unprecedented to see this process is not working out the way it has been. That says a lot about where the United States stands. I think ultimately President Donald Trump has no chance to overturn this election, but the way that the Republicans' reaction to this, it says a lot about where the system stands.
How much power does the incumbent President Donald Trump, will have on affecting Biden's momentum of winning this election, Mr. Wang?
Well, I think, you know, the incumbent president is very hard to beat. That's why a lot of these U.S. presidents have second terms, because they have all the resources to play out, to you know, to compete with the opponent. And this election season specifically, the United States was facing a lot of crisis. It was in the middle of the COVID-19, the worst outbreak of the COVID-19. But usually during these times of crisis, you know, the incumbent would always win. But I think the result so far we've seen dealt a very clear objection and rejection to President Donald Trump's way of managing the country, governing the country, and his way of rhetoric. But I think ultimately this is just a short fix. President-elect Joe Biden will not come in to fix everything. I think the United States have a long way to go to unify and to address all these problems. Indeed,
the U.S. is facing multiple crises, and for example, COVID-19 is, of course, one of them. And in his speech, Biden pledged to be a president who seeks to unify rather than divide, and he would unify by rebuilding the backbone of the U.S. But let's not forget, gentlemen, more than 70 million people cast votes for Trump. So will the American society be more divided than even before the election? Mr. Janssen.
I'll take that question. I think that is basically the biggest lesson that we've learned from this election, you know, is the fact that how divided our country is. You know, I think for the Democrats, well, let me say, going into the election, this is what you saw, is you saw both parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, felt that if their side did not win, that this would mean the end of America. You know, that it was a do or die situation, you know, for, you know, both parties. And that's literally how, that's, I think, why you've seen so many people, you know, coming out to, you know, to vote this year, and why there's been record-breaking numbers, you know, for the voter turnout, why so many people are passionate. You know, I think, you know, I come from a very, you know, strong Republican base in Florida. That is where, you know, I grew up in. And it was amazing, you know, just the amount of fear that was being spread, you know, and a lot of it is just not true, but a lot of people thinking, wow, if you know, Joe Biden wins, you know, America is going to become a socialist country. You know, we're going to become a communist country. We're going to have all of these policies, you know, from the Democrats that are going to be so far, you know, different than what we're used to. So there was a lot of fear. I think that, you know, this is going to be Joe Biden's greatest challenge. I mean, he's come out and said, you know, I don't see blue states or red states. I see American states. I'm going to fight just as hard for the people that voted against me as the ones that voted for me. This is easy to say in a speech, but this is going to be his biggest challenge, because, you know, even if we look at how the United States government is controlled, you know, the Republicans are going to maintain control of the Senate. They're essentially going to be, you know, playing hardball. They're going to block, you know, any policy that Biden's going to move forward. So it's going to be almost a stalemate in the United States government, you know, as Biden tries to put forward these policies, and he's definitely going to get a lot of backlash from a lot of Americans that don't support him. So, you know, I think this is a very difficult time for America. this is not going to be an easy presidency or transition for Joe Biden moving forward.
Yeah, and one of the key policies we should expect from Biden is that he will announce a special 12-person task force to tackle COVID-19, and he says the plan will be built on the bedrock of science. But many of Trump's supporters aren't even wearing masks, or they are challenging the scientific side of the virus. Given these obstacles, Mr. Wang, how can Biden realistically turn this pandemic around?
Well, it's very tough, I would say. It's very unrealistic. For one thing, yes, he can put together a task force, he can put together a guidelines, but can he enforce it? For example, just one simple example, can he force everybody in the United States to wear a mask? Because that's a very political issue, and I'm pretty sure that the 70 million people who voted for Donald Trump thinks that a mask is not a solution for that, and they would not wear that. So yeah, I think it's very unrealistic for President-elect Joe Biden to address this. Yes, that's a good start to respect science and put together a group of experts who can inform on this very professional way. But I think the way to enforce it, because the United States, I think it's not everybody just blaming on Trump for failing to contain this virus, but also it's about how you articulate these policies and the seriousness of this illness. And I think it's going to be very tough to articulate that and to enforce what the experts would suggest.
Sure, and of course, fighting COVID-19 will be a very important domestic agenda. There is so much more to discuss, but we have to leave you there. Thank you so much for your analysis, Mr. Cyrus Janssen, China business consultant at APP Marketing Solutions, and Mr. Wang Cong, chief reporter at the Global Times. We'll take a short break, and when we return, Indonesia says it wants to use China's coronavirus vaccine on 9 million people. What's driving this decision, and what's the impact?